You know, it's kind of wild to think that by 2050, the global economy is projected to look, well, almost unrecognizable compared to today. We're talking about a real shakeup, right? With established powers potentially shifting in a big, big move towards Asia.
Definitely.
So for you trying to navigate what the future might hold, let's really dig into what this all means.
Absolutely. It's not just a minor adjustment. We really are looking at a fundamental reshaping of the economic world order.
Yeah.
And to get a handle on this, we've pulled together forecasts from some of the big institutions, PwC, HSBC, the IMF, World Bank, Goldman Sachs. They're all trying to look into this 2050 crystal ball.
That's quite the lineup of heavy hitters. So, okay, what actually goes into these long-range forecasts? What are the key things they're looking at to make predictions that far out?
Well, at the foundation, you've got GDP, gross domestic product, basically measuring the total value of stuff a country produces.
Right.
And you'll see two main types, nominal GDP, which is just the raw number, and then PPP, purchasing power parity.
Ah, PPP. I always hear about that. Why is that one so important for these long-term views?
Yeah, PPP is really key because it adjusts for how much things actually cost in different countries. It tries to level the playing field.
Okay.
Think of it like how far does your dollar or your currency actually go in different places? It gives a better sense of real economic muscle and living standards over time.
Got it. So it's a fairer comparison across borders, especially long-term. Makes sense. What else are they factoring in? It can't just be GDP.
Oh, definitely not. Demographics are huge. I mean, really huge.
Like population size, age.
Both. A country with a young, growing population, that's often a natural engine for growth. But an aging population, well, that can bring challenges. Then there's productivity. How efficiently does a country actually make things or provide services?
And that comes down to?
Things like technology, innovation, education, the skills of the workforce, adopting new tech, big drivers there. Yeah. And we also look at how diversified the economy is. Does it rely on just oil, or does it have lots of different industries? And of course, political stability and economic reforms, those can make or break things.
Right, so it's a whole mix of factors, really interconnected.
Right.
Okay, so our goal here in this deep dive is to kind of cut through all that complexity.
Exactly.
And pinpoint which countries are really projected to be the main players by 2050, and crucially, why. What are the big reasons behind these shifts? We want to give you a clear, sort of digestible picture of this massive global change.
Precisely. And when you step back, look at the big picture, the historical context is pretty striking.
How so?
Well, for the last century, maybe century and a half, Western economies have largely been in the driver's seat, right?
Yeah, the U.S., Europe.
Exactly. But these projections, they're pretty clear. That era, or at least that level of dominance, seems to be winding down significantly.
Wow. That really is a monumental shift then.
Yeah.
What are some of the headline numbers that show this?
Okay, well, get this. Forecasts suggest by 2050, maybe 3 of the top 4 biggest economies in the world could be Asian.
3 out of 4.
Yeah. A huge rebalancing. And it's not just single countries. Emerging markets as a whole are projected to overtake the G7 countries.
The G7 being U.S., U.K., Germany, Japan, France, Canada, Italy.
That's them. And the E7, that's the emerging 7. China, India, Brazil, Russia, Indonesia, Mexico, Turkey. Their combined GDP. It's expected to be maybe 50% larger than the G7's in PPP terms by 2050.
50% larger. Okay. That really underscores the scale of this potential shift. All right, let's get specific then. Starting with a current number 2, projected future number 1, China.
Right. So as of now, 2024, China's number 2 if you look at nominal GDP, but it's already number 1 by that PPP measure we talked about.
Okay.
And the consensus in these forecasts. By 2050, China's likely to be the largest economy overall, period.
What's keeping them moving forward? What are the main drivers?
Well, several big things. First, just sheer population size, though we have to note their population is starting to age, which is a factor. They've also made massive strides in advanced manufacturing, and they're really pushing hard, leading in some key future tech like AI, green technology.
Right, you hear a lot about that.
Yeah. And then there's the Belt and Road Initiative, that huge infrastructure project connecting Asia, Africa, Europe. It's all designed to boost their global economic reach.
But it can't be all smooth sailing, surely.
Yeah.
What are the potential bumps in the road for China heading towards 2050?
No, definitely not smooth sailing. That demographic shift, the aging population, that's a serious long-term challenge.
Okay.
Geopolitical stuff, too, especially the whole U.S.-China relationship, that creates uncertainty. And their economy has been pretty reliant on property and exports. Those could be vulnerabilities if things slow down there. So the key takeaway for you listening is probably that while China's expected to be dominant, likely top in PPP, they might face, stiffer competition on the innovation front down the line.
Makes sense. Okay, let's pivot to another Asian giant, India. It feels like India's getting a lot of buzz lately for its growth.
Oh, absolutely. India's currently, fifth in nominal GDP, third in PPP. But its projected growth path is really interesting.
How so?
By 2050, a lot of these models suggest it could hit number 2 globally. And some even think potentially number 1, especially if you look at sectors driven purely by population size.
Wow, potentially number 1. What's fueling that kind of growth?
Well, the big one is demographics. India just passed China as the most populous nation, and crucially, it's young. Median age around 29. That's a huge advantage.
Yeah, it's incredibly young.
Plus, you've got rapid urbanization, people moving to cities, and this massive push on digital transformation, like their digital payments, digital ID systems. It's building this huge digital backbone.
Right.
And both their services and manufacturing sectors are really expanding quite fast.
But what are the hurdles? What does India need to fix to really hit that potential?
Infrastructure is a big one. Roads, ports, power needs massive investment. Addressing inequality is still a major issue, and ensuring quality education for everyone. And sometimes bureaucracy, red tape can slow things down. But the key thing for you is India has immense potential. If they can really push reforms, speed things up, they have a real shot at leapfrogging others in the coming decades.
Fascinating. Okay, let's hop across the Pacific. The United States. Still number 1 nominal, but the forecasts see a shift.
That's right. U.S. is number 1 nominal now, second in PPP. But yeah, the forecasts generally point toward maybe third place overall by 2050.
Okay, third place. But even if the ranking slips, what are the core strengths the U.S. still holds on to?
Oh, plenty. The U.S. is still expected to be maybe the global leader in innovation. Think AI, biotech, finance, cutting-edge stuff.
Right.
That innovation leadership is tied directly to why they'll likely stay strong in those key sectors, driving future value. Plus, military strength, the dollar's global role, those still count for a lot. And they have strong institutions generally and still benefit from immigration fueling dynamism.
So what are the headwinds then? What contributes to that potential slip in ranking?
Well, like China, an aging population is a factor. The national debt burden is significant. Political polarization doesn't help economic planning.
Yeah.
And just the general global trend towards, a more multipolar world might mean a relative decline in U.S. global influence, even if the economy itself stays huge.
So the main point for listeners is
that even with a shift in GDP rank, expect the U.S. to remain a dominant force in innovation and a major, major economic power. Just maybe not the undisputed number 1 in overall size.
Got it. Now let's talk about one that might raise some eyebrows with its projected climb. Indonesia.
Indonesia is definitely one to watch, currently ranked around 16th globally.
Right.
But projections suggest it could climb all the way to 4th place by 2050.
4th. That's a huge leap. What's driving that?
A few things coming together. It's got a large population, and like India, it's young, median age around 30. That means a big domestic market, growing workforce.
Okay.
Its location is also pretty strategic, right there between China and India. Good for trade, investment, and we're seeing strong domestic demand growth, plus their industrial base is expanding.
What are the risks there? What could hold Indonesia back?
Infrastructure development needs to keep up. That's key. Avoid bottlenecks.
Right.
And tackling corruption, improving governance, those are crucial to really unlock the potential and keep investment flowing.
Right.
But yeah, the takeaway for you is think of Indonesia as maybe the sleeping giant of Southeast Asia. Huge inherent potential that could really shake things up.
Interesting. Okay, let's quickly run through some of the others projecting that top 10. Brazil, expected top 5.
Yeah, Brazil. Big strengths are its natural resources, large consumer market, strong agribusiness, manufacturing. But political volatility can be a real issue, and it's still quite dependent on commodity prices, which swing up and down. The key for Brazil is stability. If they get that and consistent reforms, they could really cement themselves as Latin America's leader.
Okay. What about Russia? Obviously facing a lot right now.
Yeah, despite everything, projections still often place Russia in the top 10, maybe 6th in PPP terms.
Why is that?
Mostly down to being a massive energy exporter and having a large military industrial base, but the challenges are huge. Sanctions lagging behind in some tech areas, a demographic crisis, their population is declining, and the current governance model.
So the takeaway.
Likely to remain resource-rich, but diversifying the economy beyond that, that's going to be tough. A major hurdle.
Right. Mexico is also projected to climb, landing around 7th.
Mexico benefits a lot from its close ties to the U.S., that USMCA trade deal.
The new NAFTA.
Exactly. And this trend of nearshoring companies moving production closer to home, maybe out of Asia, that's helping Mexico's manufacturing sector grow.
And downside.
Crime remains a serious issue, and inequality. Need to tackle those for sustainable, inclusive growth. But the geography and trade links, big advantages for Mexico.
Okay. Now, Japan and Germany. Traditional powerhouses, but projected to slip a bit to 8th and 9th.
Yeah, that's a general trend. For Japan, despite being super high-tech, strong global companies, it's really wrestling with demographics. Aging, shrinking workforce, low immigration, and kind of persistent economic stagnation.
So it's still important, but slower growth.
Exactly. Relevant through innovation, definitely, but overall growth likely slower. Germany, similarly, is an engineering and export giant, key EU leader, but also faces an aging population, worries about energy dependency, and maybe hasn't adopted new digital tech quite as fast as some others.
And rounding out the projected top 10, the UK.
UK predicted around 10th. Strengths are definitely finance. London's still huge education, soft power, and growing tech and biotech sectors.
Risks.
Well, the fallout from Brexit is still being debated and felt, and there are internal political pressures, too. Those are the potential drags on growth.
Okay, that covers the top 10. Are there any other countries, maybe just outside that list, that our listeners should keep an eye on? Ones that could surprise us?
Oh, for sure. Nigeria is one. Massive, rapid population growth gives it huge long-term potential. But big challenges right now with governance, infrastructure, security.
Okay.
Turkey's another interesting one. Great location, young population, but dealing with high inflation, some instability risks currently. And then you've got some really fast-growing economies like Vietnam, the Philippines, Egypt. They're all expanding their industries, have large workforces. These countries, just outside the top tier, could absolutely shift the landscape significantly by 2050.
It's also really important to think about sectors, isn't it? It's not just about the total size of the economy. Different countries might lead in different areas.
Absolutely critical point. You get a much richer picture when you look at sectors like AI, cybersecurity, green tech. You're probably looking at the U.S., China, maybe India pushing the boundaries there.
Okay.
Energy, still likely Russia, Saudi Arabia, maybe Brazil playing huge roles. Finance, U.S., U.K., Singapore probably remain key hubs.
Agriculture.
Agriculture, yeah. Think Brazil, India, U.S., major food producers. It really shows that economic power isn't just one number. It's spread across different strengths.
So let's try and wrap this up.
Yeah.
The big takeaway seems undeniable. The global economic map is being redrawn pretty significantly.
No doubt about it.
A major shift towards Asia, the rise of these emerging markets. And it's not just about GDP rankings changing, is it? It's about influence, innovation, resilience, the whole package.
Exactly right. It really touches on everything. And, it leads to a pretty interesting question for you listening to this deep dive. Based on all this, which country do you think will actually hold the most significant global influence come 2050? And maybe more importantly, what factors beyond just the size of the economy will be most crucial in deciding that?
Yeah, that's definitely something to chew on. Influence isn't just money, is it? Technology, culture, political stability, lots to consider.
Lots to consider.
Well, hopefully this deep dive gave you plenty to think about. We really encourage you to keep exploring these global trends. Think about what they mean for everything, really. Thanks for joining.